Well, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix is in the books for 2022, and we have a sixth different winner for the street circuit in Baku. Yes, the six editions that have taken place thus far have seen now six different winners, as Max Verstappen, who was on course to win the race last year in 2021 before a very cruel retirement due to a tire failure later on, has his redemption. He's won the 2022 edition of the race, and he's led home a Red Bull 1-2 with Sergio Perez in second place. Of course, Perez might just feel a little hard done by, given that he was ordered not to actually fight his teammate when the two of them were competing for the lead. But the logic that at least I was able to glean as to why that they asked him not to fight was because Checo was struggling to manage his tires, which is in itself quite strange. Normally, Checo is known as the tire whisperer because he's someone who knows how to get the best out of his tires, particularly the mediums, which is what they started the race on. But arguably the biggest news story, aside from the fact that both Red Bulls absolutely cruised home in first and second, is that both Ferraris ended up retiring. Yes, Carlos Sainz was the first one. He retired with what was described later on as a hydraulics issue. And then, not too long after, it was Charles Leclerc who ended up retiring from the race. And it was a major moment for him because remember, he was in fact in front at that point and was then ended up having to retire with what looked like an engine failure and was later confirmed to be a power unit issue. In fact, it says a lot that the other two retirees as well, who retired after Leclerc, one was Zhou Guanyu and the other was, of course, Kevin Magnussen. Both of them were driving cars that were powered by Ferrari power units. So obviously there's some sort of reliability issues with those Ferrari engines that will need to be fixed before they can actually consider mounting a serious comeback, and they will need to be mounting a comeback because as things stand, they started the first part of the season clear favorites in the title race, even though the Red Bulls were pacey, they had reliability issues. Now that the Red Bulls have actually fixed their reliability issues, it's the Ferraris who are not lacking for pace, but their reliability has absolutely gone for a toss. As in the last three races, that's the second retirement that Leclerc has had due to what is seemingly engine issues. I'm pretty sure the Monegasque would not be happy, and in fact, when he was stepping out of the car, he cut a very forlorn and disappointed figure. It's the pose of a man that knows that he's doing everything that he can. There's everything in his power rather, but he's being let down by circumstances that are beyond him, whether it be poor strategy, whether it be reliability issues. Well, he's seeing that lead has slipped away from him. In fact, he's now third in the World Drivers' Championship standings because Verstappen is pulled ahead and now Perez is sitting in second place. So it seems that the biggest threat to Max Verstappen's title defense as things stand is in fact his own teammate. Of course, we can debate as to whether or not Red Bull would use team orders more in the future. They did so today, but of course, they might just end up letting them race later on. At least the optimist in me hopes that they can, in fact, get into a better position later on. But let's wait and watch. I'm going to take a few of you guys' comments right now. So Love Rami says yes, Supermax now 5 out of 8 for Red Bull, and Verstappen in fact is looking in prime form right now. He drove a flawless race this time around. In fact, I would say even in 2021 he was driving a flawless race, but that late tire failure absolutely cost him, and he was a little unfortunate, but what can we say? Yes, Devajit Datta says, what's the issue with Ferrari? Well, mate, your guess is as good as mine. They've had reliability issues now for the 2 out of the 3 last races, both in Spain as well as now in Baku. In Monaco, they looked up to speed, but, overtaking, as we know, there can be very hard. But they need to be sorting out whatever issues they've happened, because when they've not had reliability issues, they've been plagued with poor strategy, and that was their major problem in Monaco. Here it really wasn't a problem because they didn't last long enough for the strategy to come into play. Anyway, I'll answer Devajit your question after that. Why was Norris told to hold station and not overtake? I think it's because, and this is just my speculation, is that the McLarens just wanted to bring the cars home, get a double points finish at a circuit where they totally expected that they would actually be able to dominate, or rather not dominate, where they would struggle for points. So for them, double points finish, major problem for them. them, or at least should have been a major problem to even achieve that, but they did in fact end up getting that double points finish. So maybe that's why they didn't want to let their drivers race. Lavrami says, yes, Ferrari indeed being Ferrari is the funniest stroll of the day. Yes, that's the thing. They have indeed been very, very fast in qualifying. Leclerc in particular has been a beast in qualifying, but the strategy and more often than not their reliability is in fact now haunting them over these past few races. And yes, Debujit, I'm happy with how Mercedes fared. Russell, as we said, got a podium. It's his third podium of the season. Very, very happy. As you can see, the super fan in me in the Mercedes T. Hamilton gets a fourth place finish. Very, very happy with that as well. But of course, that's a bit of a deceptive result. We know that the Mercedes were clearly just the third fastest cars on the grid, and the only reason they ended up finishing third or fourth this time around was because both the Ferraris retired. Nevertheless, good points for the team, and now they're just like 20 odd points behind, the Ferraris. So Mercedes currently third in the Constructors' Championship. That in fact is, a good thing for them that they're this close to Ferrari despite not having a car to match either of the two front runners. So yes, Debujit, to answer your question, I am happy with that result. Very pleased for George as well, who, as Rahul Rai points out, is a star. Yes, in fact, I'd go out there and make a bold prediction and say that Mercedes right now is looking more and more like George's team rather than Lewis's team, because even yesterday, if you remember, there were quite a few times when they sent out Lewis ahead of George because they knew that George was able to extract better qualifying performances from that car. So they were sending Hamilton before Russell so that Hamilton could give Russell a tow, which, as we know, is very important and can actually gain you a few thousandths of a second at that particular time. Yeah, Love Ravi, I am happy. As I mentioned, I am very, very pleased with the fact that they managed to get that finish. Fourth podium this season, yes, it's the fourth podium for Mercedes. Third for Russell, because remember, Hamilton got a podium in the season opener at Bahrain as well. So yeah, I agree. Good to see the Red Bulls and the Mercs back competing. Ferrari do have the car, but they don't seem to have the all package right now. I think Matteo Binotto is going to have quite a few sleepless nights, and he would be having quite a few headaches because there's a lot to fix. When their reliability kicks in, then when reliability issues kick in, then it's always a problem. But even without the reliability issues, I mean, they've been facing even problems with strategy, which is what cost them in Monaco. So there's quite clearly a lot of things that they have to be working on. And yes, Piyush, I would like to see the fight on track without reliability. I absolutely agree. I think one of the things that was such a highlight in the early parts of the season was when you saw Max and Charles actually fight wheel to wheel. I mean, remember how they fought at Bahrain, and then even later on at Saudi Arabia. So there were very good close racing on the track, and I agree. I would like to see more races decided beyond things like safety issues, safety car issues, or it be reliability. I agree with that, but of course we know that's part and parcel of the sport. Ironically, we were actually inching close to reaching that sort of situation, because remember, the Ferraris initially were very, very reliable and very, very fast. It was the Red Bulls who had reliability issues. Red Bull have fixed that, and now the Ferraris are having reliability issues. So if both teams are hearing us, I'm sure they'd be wanting that as well. They'd wanted out that they'd wanted that they can be competing on track rather than have these issues with reliability. And yes, Piyush, I agree, the season has lost a bit of spark in terms of there's not been that much racing. But of course, you also have to notice the fact that reliability issues were kind of expected. Remember, it's a new generation of cars, and so there will be problems when it comes to these teams are going to be figuring out a lot as the season goes on. So let's take a look at how the other teams fared. And so I'm opening the driver's grids position in front of me. Good performance for Pierre Gasly, who last season had become synonymous with P5 and P6. Brings his AlphaTauri back home in fifth, so that's very good. Another good performance for Seb Vettel in that Aston Martin. He comes home sixth. Fernando Alonso looked like a man possessed for most of this weekend, whether it be in free practice, qualifying, and even in the race. P7, he did well enough. Ricardo and Norris, of course, 8th and 9th in their McLarens. And rounding off the top 10 was, of course, Esteban Ocon of Alpine. So if you look at it, there are 4 teams in the top 4 who are, looking pretty solid in terms of results. There's, of course, both Red Bulls in the top 10. There's both Mercedes in the top 10. And there's, of course, both McLarens and Alpines. And it is indeed, interesting to see. Yes, as Piyush Plaman mentions, that Vettel is outperforming the Aston as things stand. Yeah, he's extracting some very fine performances, but I would debate whether or not it's him outperforming the Aston, or it's just the fact that his teammate Lance Stroll hasn't quite been able to get on top of the car yet. But we'll see that with other races. I strongly suspect it's just a case of the car is now decent, or a decent midfield package, but Stroll is struggling with the car, which is a bit ironic in many ways because the team is owned by his dad. So you'd think that he'd be able to get that car working and, he'd have access to, information, or even when it comes to a say in terms of getting that car set up and stuff like that. But yeah, Stroll has been struggling. And as far as teams would be disappointed with how this race went, of course, there's Haas, because they had one car retire due to a reliability issue that was not in fact that couldn't be entirely controlled by Haas, because it was a Ferrari issue. And even Alfa Romeo, neither of the Alphas did very covered themselves in flattering performance. In fact, Zhou was in top in 10th when he was asked to retire, so obviously that's not something that he would have wanted. But of course, I think the biggest the team most disappointed with how this race went would have been Ferrari. Two cars retiring is just not good enough. And I don't think that this is something that even the drivers would be frustrated, because there was not really much effort lacking from either of them, although I think Sainz could have been a bit faster. But both cars having to retire, there's going to be a lot of questions asked ahead of the next race, which is, of course, the Canadian Grand Prix. And yes, Lavrami, Alonso is now the longest serving F1 driver if you go by when he debuted from. So yes, he debuted in 2001. He's still racing. So, Mr. Longevity, as the commentators were calling him, is a very good term, even though, yeah, as we know, he's had break years in between and stuff like that. But the fact that he's still racing is massive. Happy to see him back up and about in the points. Anyway, this concludes our show here, and also brings to an end what was a very good weekend of Formula One racing. The Azerbaijan Grand Prix, more often than not, never fails to disappoint, and the same can be said about this race as well. Plenty of drama, plenty of overtaking, good racing overall. I don't know about you guys. I'm personally excited for when we head next to the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Canada. I'm going to be covering that one for you guys as well, so don't forget to join us then. And thank you all for joining us here. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment. If you haven't already, leave us a comment. We're more than happy to read what it is that you have to say. And of course, we are already live for we're previewing the India-South Africa second T20I. I'm not in that yet because I'm here with you guys, so I'm going to end this live, rush downstairs to our studio, and you will see me down there in about a minute or so. That's it from me, Shane Dias. Bye-bye for now. Good night.